The world, for 6-year-old Lily, was a treacherous landscape. For Clara, it was a puzzle to be solved, one agonizing, triumphant inch at a time. Okay, Lilybug, your foot is a brave explorer, and it's about to land on a new planet. Nice and slow. Clara knelt on the brightly colored mat of the pediatric therapy clinic, her hands providing the barest whisper of support at the child's hips. Lily, her small body rigid with the spasticity of cerebral palsy, her face a mask of fierce concentration, wobbled. Her tiny leg, encased in a pink plastic brace, trembled with the monumental effort of moving forward. For a second, she wavered, her balance faltering. Clara didn't rush to catch her. She waited, her presence a silent promise of safety, not a crutch. Lily's foot landed. It was clumsy, a half stomp that was more of a controlled fall, but it was a step. A wide, beatific smile broke across the little girl's face, a sunrise of pure accomplishment. "I did it, Clara," she breathed. "You did it, superstar. That was your best one yet." This was her world. Not a world of profit margins or venture capital, but one of small, hard-won victories that felt more valuable than any stock portfolio. At 30, Clara had built a life of quiet, meaningful independence. She was a respected therapist, a homeowner, a woman who paid her own bills and found her purpose in helping children navigate a world that wasn't built for them. It was a stable, compassionate life. And in the eyes of her family, it was a colossal disappointment. Her phone, tucked away in a cubby, buzzed, vibrating against a stack of medical journals. She ignored it, her focus entirely on Lily. But it buzzed again, and then a third time. The insistent triple buzz was her brother's signature, a sound that always signaled a new level of self-inflicted panic. With an apologetic smile to Lily's mother, she excused herself. The caller ID confirmed it. Evan. She stepped into the hallway and answered. "Evan, I'm with a patient. What's up?" "Clara, thank God." His voice was a rush of frantic energy, laced with the forced, breezy chirm he used when he was about to ask for something. "Big things are happening, Claire. Huge. We just got a preliminary term sheet from a new VC firm for
Clara
Innovate, and it's
leaned
a
her
game
head
changer."
against the cool wall. Innovate was Evan's latest startup, a vague lifestyle synergy app that had, to date, burned through an astonishing amount of their parents' retirement savings. "That's great, Evan," she said, her voice flat. "It is. It's incredible. Just one tiny little hiccup," he said, the words speeding up. "We've got a temporary cash flow situation. A bridge loan fell through at the last minute. Stupid banks, you know how they are. It's just for a few weeks until the new funding clears." He paused, and she could practically hear him preparing the hook. "I was just thinking, you've always been so good with money, so stable. You've got your house, your savings." "Evan," she cut him off, her voice gentle but firm as steel. "I'm happy for you, really, but I can't help you financially. You know that." A frustrated sigh hissed through the phone. "Yeah, okay. The fortress of responsibility. I get it. Some of us like to take risks, Clara, to build things. You wouldn't understand." "I have to go, Evan. My patient is waiting." "Yeah, fine. Go play with the kids," he muttered and hung up. Clara closed her eyes, a familiar, weary resignation washing over her. The fortress of responsibility. That was her in the family narrative. The sensible, boring brick wall against which her brother's brilliant, fiery ambitions could safely crash, over and over again. The family dinner that Saturday was, as always, a command performance. Clara walked into her parents' meticulously decorated house, a place that felt more like a magazine spread than a home, and was greeted with the scent of roasting meat and the thick, palpable tension of unspoken expectations. Her mother, Eleanor, kissed the air beside her cheek, her perfectly made-up face a mask of brittle warmth. "Clara, darling, that top is, very practical." Her father, Richard, gave her a brief, awkward hug. "Good to see you, sweetie." Evan was already there, holding a glass of their father's expensive scotch, pacing the living room as he recounted a dramatic, embellished story about a near-miss deal. Her parents hung on his every word, their faces a mixture of pride and anxiety. Dinner was served, and the Evan show continued. He spoke in a dizzying torrent of buzzwords: disruption, synergy, scalability, burn rate, that her parents nodded at with grave, uncomprehending importance. "He has such vision," Eleanor said, looking at Evan with a kind of reverent awe. "Your father and I are just so proud of the risks he's willing to take. He's building an empire." "It takes guts," Richard agreed, puffing out his chest as if he'd faced the venture capitalists himself. He turned to Clara. "So, how are things at the clinic?" He said the word clinic as if it were a slightly distasteful but necessary public service, like a laundromat. "Things are good," Clara said, forcing a smile. "One of my kids, a little girl with CP, took her first independent step this week."
Her mother gave a tight, sympathetic smile. "Oh, that's lovely, dear. It must be so rewarding working with those poor, unfortunate children." The comment, as always, was designed to frame Clara's career not as a skilled profession, but as a charitable hobby, a way for their unambitious daughter to feel useful. "They're not unfortunate, Mom. They're some of the strongest people I know." "Of course they are," Eleanor said quickly, waving her hand as if to dismiss the entire topic. She turned back to her son. "Now, Evan, tell us more about this new round of funding. Will you finally be able to get yourself a decent car?" Clara spent the rest of the dinner in a state of quiet invisibility, a sensible beige ghost at the feast of her brother's glorious potential. They didn't ask about her life, her dreams, her plans to take a career-defining certification course in Europe next year. They didn't see her. They saw a safety net. A stable, reliable daughter who would always be there, quietly paying her mortgage, while their real child, the golden one, shot for the stars. Later that night, back in the quiet sanctuary of her own home, Clara tried to shake off the familiar feeling of worthlessness that always followed a family dinner. Her house, a small two-bedroom bungalow she had bought and decorated herself, was a testament to her independence. It was the one place where she wasn't the fortress of responsibility. She was just Clara. She sat at her kitchen table, sipping chamomile tea and looking over the brochure for the advanced pediatric therapy course in Vienna. The photos of the historic Austrian city and the world-renowned institute were a balm to her soul. Her emergency savings account, which she diligently fed for 5 years, was finally full enough. This trip was her reward, the culmination of a long-held professional dream. A sharp, stabbing pain suddenly shot through her lower abdomen. She gasped, doubling over. It felt like a hot knife twisting in her gut. Probably just stress from the dinner, she thought, or something she ate. She took a few deep breaths, waiting for it to pass. It didn't. It intensified. A wave of nausea washed over her, and a cold sweat broke out on her forehead. The pain was no longer a sharp stab. It was a deep, relentless, agonizing fire. This wasn't indigestion. This was wrong. Terribly wrong. She stumbled from the chair, a strangled cry escaping her lips. The room began to spin. She crawled towards the living room, her vision tunneling, black spots dancing in front of her eyes. Her phone was on the coffee table. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, she lunged for it, her fingers fumbling with the screen. She managed to dial 911, gasping her address to the operator, before the phone slipped from her slick hand and clattered to the floor. The world dissolved into a vortex of pain and darkness. Consciousness returned in jarring, painful fragments. The first thing she registered was the smell, a harsh, sterile blend of antiseptic and bleach that stung her nostrils. Then the sound, the rhythmic, metronomic beep of a machine somewhere to her right. Finally, the feeling,
a searing, localized fire in her side, a pain so profound it seemed to have its own weight. She forced her eyelids open. The world was a blurry watercolor of white and pale green. A figure in scrubs moved in and out of her field of vision. An IV tube was taped to the back of her hand, snaking its way up to a clear bag hanging from a metal pole. A woman's face swam into focus above her. She had kind, tired eyes and a gentle smile. Her name tag read, Dr. L. Petrova. "Welcome back, Miss Vance," the doctor said, her voice calm and reassuring. "You gave us quite a scare." "What?" Clara's voice was a dry, ragged croak. "What happened?" "You were brought in by ambulance a few hours ago," Dr. Petrova explained, her hand resting gently on Clara's shoulder. "You had a severely ruptured appendix. It had become badly infected. We had to perform an emergency appendectomy." The words hung in the air, clinical and terrifying. Ruptured, infected, emergency surgery. Dr. Petrova's kind eyes held hers. "You're very lucky the paramedics got to you when they did. You came in just in time." Clara lay back against the stiff hospital pillow, the doctor's words crashing down on her with the force of a physical blow. She was alone, in a strange room, hooked up to machines, and the only thing she could feel, beyond the searing pain in her side, was the chilling, absolute certainty that her life had just been saved, and in doing so, had been changed forever. The first 24 hours after the surgery were a blurry hell of pain, potent painkillers, and the disorienting beep of the heart monitor. Clara drifted in and out of a shallow, drug-induced sleep, each moment of waking a fresh agony. Her side felt like it had been set on fire and then stitched back together with barbed wire. Dr. Petrova was a constant calming presence. She explained the severity of the situation with a kindness that felt like a lifeline. "The infection was quite advanced, Clara," she said, her voice gentle, as she checked the IV drip. "Peritonitis had begun to set in. You are incredibly fortunate you called for help when you did. Your body has a big fight ahead of it, but you are strong." Her family's visit, when it finally came late the next afternoon, felt less like a comfort and more like an intrusion. They swept into the sterile room in a cloud of expensive perfume and agitated energy, bringing the chaos of the outside world with them. "Clara, you look absolutely dreadful," her mother, Eleanor, announced, her eyes flitting around the room with distaste. "And this room is so drab. You'd think for the prices they charge, they could at least manage some cheerful curtains." "This is a real mess, Clara," her father, Richard, added, looking at her with an expression of deep inconvenience. "I had to cancel my golf game. Your work will have to find a substitute, I assume." Evan, predictably, made it about himself. He paced at the foot of her bed, already pulling out his phone. "Man, Claire, talk about bad timing. I've got this huge investor meeting on Tuesday, and Mom is a nervous wreck, which is totally throwing off my focus." There were no soft questions about her pain, no words of comfort, no gentle hand on her forehead. Instead, there was a barrage of logistical and financial inquiries, each one a small, sharp jab. "You do have your own primary insurance, right, from the clinic?" Eleanor asked, her tone sharp. "And you did give them our information for the secondary policy, just as a backup," Richard pressed. "They have all my information," Clara managed to rasp, her throat dry. They stayed for a total of 15 excruciating minutes before Eleanor declared she simply couldn't bear the depressing hospital smell a moment longer. They left as they had arrived, in a flurry, leaving behind only the lingering scent of perfume and a profound, chilling sense of abandonment. Clara was not their daughter, recovering from a near-death experience. She was a problem on their schedule, an unexpected and annoying expense. 2 days later, the painkillers had been reduced, and the world began to come back into sharp, painful focus. Clara was sitting up in bed, gingerly prodding at the bandage on her abdomen, when a woman in a crisp navy business suit knocked on her door. "Ms. Vance, my name is Susan Albright. I'm from the hospital's financial administration office. Do you have a moment to discuss the billing for your procedure?" Clara nodded, her stomach clenching with a new kind of dread. Miss Albright entered, her demeanor professional but firm, and sat in the chair her mother had briefly occupied. She opened a sleek leather portfolio. "First of all, I'm very glad to see you're recovering well. Now, I just need to go over the preliminary statement of charges for your emergency surgery and subsequent ICU stay." She turned the portfolio around. Clara's eyes scanned the list of itemized charges: surgery, anesthesia, pathology, 3 nights in the intensive care unit, medication. The number at the bottom was so large, so astronomical, that her brain momentarily refused to process it. It was more than she made in a year. "This is, of course, the pre-insurance total," Miss Albright said calmly. "We have already been in contact with your primary provider from your employer. They have been excellent, and their estimated coverage is quite comprehensive." Clara felt a wave of relief. "Okay, good. And my parents' plan is the secondary?" Ms. Albright's professional smile tightened almost imperceptibly. She cleared her throat. "Yes, well, that is the reason for my visit. We contacted the secondary provider, the policy held by your father, Richard Vance. The claim was denied." Clara stared at her. "Denied? That's not possible. It was a life-threatening emergency." "I understand your confusion," Ms. Albright said, her voice taking on a careful, practiced neutrality. "However, when we spoke with your parents to authorize the claim, they informed the provider that, as you are over the age of 26 and are a fully independent adult with your own coverage, they would not be authorizing the use of their plan for this procedure." The words didn't make sense. They were a jumble of insurance jargon and cruelty that Clara couldn't parse. But why? I'm still on their plan. We pay for it." Ms. Albright hesitated, a flicker of genuine sympathy in her eyes. She stated to the claims agent that it was to avoid a catastrophic claim impact, which would cause a significant increase in their annual premiums for the next several years. There it was, the cold, selfish, transactional truth. They had done a cost-benefit analysis of their daughter's life and decided she wasn't a sound investment. They had chosen to protect their insurance premiums over protecting her. Ms. Albright slid a single sheet of paper across the bedside table. "After your primary insurance pays its portion, this is the estimated out-of-pocket responsibility you will be facing. The hospital does offer payment plans, of course." Clara looked down at the paper. The number was still impossibly large. It was $42,000. It was a debt that could cripple her, a weight that could sink her. It was, she realized with a sickening, hollow certainty, the price of her own survival. After Ms. Albright left, Clara lay in her bed, the billing statement clutched in her hand, the paper crinkling in her white-knuckled grip. The physical pain in her side was nothing compared to the gaping, cavernous wound that had just been torn open inside her. This was not neglect. This was an act of deliberate, calculated abandonment. She tried calling her parents. Her mother's phone went straight to voicemail. Her father answered on the 4th ring, his voice flustered and defensive. "Clara, I can't talk right now. I'm about to step into a meeting." "You denied the insurance claim?" she said, her voice flat and dead. There was a sputtering on the other end of the line.
No, listen, it's not that simple. You're a 30-year-old woman, Clara. You have a good job. We can't be expected to be financially responsible for you forever. Evan's company, it really needs our support right now, and we just can't afford to have our rates go up. We knew your savings were healthy. We knew you could handle it. The casual cruelty of that final admission, we knew you could handle it, was the final twist of the knife. They hadn't just abandoned her, they had justified it. Her responsibility, her hard-won independence, had been weaponized against her. They had used her strength as an excuse to abdicate their own humanity. "I have to go," he said, and the line went dead. She dropped the phone onto the bed. She was utterly, completely alone. She thought of her house, of the mortgage payments that were a stretch even on her best day. This new debt would be an anchor, dragging her down for years, potentially for decades. It could ruin her. Her gaze fell on her purse, which a nurse had placed on the bedside table. Tucked into the side pocket was a folded, worn brochure. With a pained grunt, she reached for it. She unfolded the paper and stared at the pictures of Vienna, at the description of the advanced pediatric certification course. It represented her ambition, her future, the next step in a career she loved. It was her one selfish, beautiful dream. And the money to pay for it, her entire life savings, was sitting in an account, waiting. She looked at the billing statement in one hand and the brochure in the other. Her debt and her dream. There was no choice, not really. With a sense of grim, final resolve, she buzzed the nurse. "Could you please bring me my laptop?" A few minutes later, she was logged into her online banking portal. Her eyes went straight to the account labeled Vienna Certification Fund. The balance was a testament to 5 years of discipline and sacrifice. It was almost the exact amount she needed. Her fingers felt like lead as she typed in the hospital's account number and routing information from the statement. She entered the transfer amount, a number so large it felt unreal. A confirmation screen appeared. "Are you sure you want to make this transfer? This action cannot be undone." She stared at the words, at the blinking cursor. This was it, the culmination of her family's silent burden. They had finally presented her with a bill for her own independence, and she was about to pay it in full. She clicked confirm. The screen refreshed, showing the new, devastatingly small balance in her savings account. A single tear, hot and sharp, escaped her eye and rolled down her temple. She was alone in the dim, quiet light of the hospital room, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating her pale, set face. The money was gone, her dream was gone, and in their place, a profound, arctic coldness began to settle in her heart. The silent burden was no longer a weight she carried. It was an open, gaping wound. The first week back in her own house was a lesson in the tyranny of small things. The simple act of getting out of bed was a 10-minute ordeal of careful, breath-held movements. Making a piece of toast left her exhausted. Her body, the reliable, sturdy vessel she had always taken for granted, was now a landscape of pain, weakness, and alien stitches that pulled with every move. But the physical agony was a dull throb compared to the sharp septic wound of her family's betrayal. It was a constant, cold presence, a ghost that sat with her in the quiet, sunlit rooms of her sanctuary. The silence was broken on the third day by a gentle knock on the door. Clara, shuffling in her bathrobe, opened it to find 2 of her colleagues from the clinic, their arms laden with grocery bags. "Invasion of the support squad," her friend Maya announced with a warm smile. "We come bearing soup, sourdough, and a truly obscene amount of chocolate." They bustled into her kitchen, their cheerful, competent energy a balm to the stagnant air in the house. They didn't ask intrusive questions or offer platitudes. They unpacked the groceries, tidied the living room, and sat with her, talking about silly clinic gossip and new patients. Their presence was a simple, profound statement.
You are not alone. We are here." Later that evening, her best friend Marco let himself in with the spare key she had given him years ago. He found her on the couch, staring blankly at the television. He took one look at her pale face and the dark circles under her eyes, and his own face hardened with a righteous fury she found incredibly comforting. "I spoke to my cousin who works in insurance law," he said, his voice a low growl as he sat down next to her. "What your parents did isn't just immoral, Clara. It's borderline fraudulent. They had a contractual obligation." "It doesn't matter, Marco," she whispered, pulling a quilt over her legs. "I paid the bill. It's done." "No, it's not done," he insisted, his loyalty a fierce protective shield. "This is beyond neglect. This is predatory. They saw you as a resource, not a daughter. Don't you forget that." His words, harsh as they were also a validation. He saw the truth she was struggling to accept. Her chosen family, the one built on mutual respect and genuine affection, had shown up. They had seen her pain and had rushed to stand beside her. The contrast with her biological family, who had remained utterly, damningly silent since she'd been discharged, was a chasm that grew wider with each passing day. The silence was finally broken a week after she came home. A sleek black SUV she recognized as her father's pulled into her driveway without a word of warning. The doorbell rang, a sharp, imperious chime. Her heart sank. She knew, with a weary certainty, that they were not here to apologize. She opened the door to find all three of them on her porch. Her mother, Eleanor, looking impeccable and impatient, her father, Richard, looking uncomfortable and avoiding her gaze, and her brother, Evan, his face a mask of frantic, desperate energy. They swept past her into the living room, her mother's eyes immediately scanning for dust. "Honestly, Clara, you should have hired a cleaner while you were in the hospital," she commented, running a finger over a bookshelf. They had not asked how she was feeling. They had not commented on how pale she looked. They were here on a mission. "Clara, we need to talk," her father began, getting straight to the point. Evan, unable to contain his agitation, cut him off. "It's Innovate. It's all falling apart. Our primary investor just pulled out. The whole thing is about to go bankrupt. Years of my life down the drain." "Your brother has worked so hard," Eleanor said, her voice trembling with a carefully calibrated dramatic flair. "He has poured his heart and soul into this company. It is a brilliant, visionary idea that is just having a small, temporary setback." Clara sank onto the edge of an armchair, a cold, heavy feeling settling in the pit of her stomach. She knew where this was going. The audacity of it was breathtaking, but not surprising. "We have a solution, Clara," her mother said to her, her expression now one of grave, solemn importance. "We know this has been a difficult time for you with your little health scare, but now the family needs you to be strong. Your brother's entire future is on the line." "This house," her father said, gesturing vaguely around the room, "it's a lovely little place, but you're just one person. It's really more space than you need. The market is excellent right now." Clara stared at them, a horrifying, unbelievable silence stretching between them. She felt as though she were watching a play, a grotesque and surreal piece of theater in which she was the unwitting prop. Evan, his face slick with a desperate sweat, finally delivered the line. "We need you to sell the house, Claire," he said, his voice cracking. "The equity you have in it, it would be more than enough to save the company. To save me." The demand, so monstrous, so utterly devoid of empathy, did not land with a crash. It landed with a quiet, terrifying click. It was the sound of the final piece of a hideous puzzle falling into place. They had refused to help save her life to protect their finances, and now they were demanding she sacrifice her home, her security, her sanctuary, the one thing that was truly hers, to save her brother's failing business.
They saw her stunned silence as hesitation and began to press their case, their words a torrent of emotional blackmail and twisted logic. "A house is just bricks and mortar, Clara," her mother said earnestly, leaning forward. "A family, your brother's future, that is forever. This is your duty. It would be a smart investment in the family's future portfolio. Evan's success is all of our success." She looked at their faces, her brother's desperate entitlement, her father's weak-willed pleading, her mother's steely, manipulative resolve, and in that moment, something inside her broke.
It was not a loud, shattering break, but a quiet, clean snap. The years of being the sensible one, the responsible one, the family's emotional and financial backstop, all of it coalesced into this one obscene demand. She began to laugh. It was a hollow, ugly, humorless sound that seemed to be ripped from somewhere deep inside her. The laughter cut them off. They stared at her, their expressions turning from persuasion to confusion and then to anger. "What is so funny?" Eleanor demanded. Clara's laughter subsided, leaving a terrifying calm in its wake. She finally saw them, not as her flawed, difficult family, but as a pack of predators who had been circling her for her entire life, waiting for the moment to strip her down to the bone. "Get out," she whispered, her voice so low they almost didn't hear it. "What did you say?" her father asked. "Get out," she repeated, her voice rising, each word dropping like a stone in the silent room. "Get out of my house, now." The moment the door closed behind them, the adrenaline that had held her upright evaporated. Clara's legs gave out and she slid down the wall to the floor, her body racked with silent, shuddering sobs. The fragmentation was complete. The last stubborn threads of familial obligation, of daughterly love, of hope for their approval had been irrevocably severed.
The betrayal was absolute. Her life, her home, her very survival, all of it had been weighed on a scale against her brother's failing app and had been found wanting. She was not a person to them. She was an asset to be liquidated. She stayed on the floor for what felt like hours, the afternoon sun slanting across the room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. This was rock bottom, a place of such profound isolation and despair, she felt she might never find her way out. Her chosen family had rallied, but her biological family, the very people who were supposed to be her foundation, had just tried to bulldoze her to the ground. Then, through the thick fog of her grief, a voice echoed in her mind, Marco's voice. "This is predatory." Her hand, numb and trembling, reached for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts and pressed his name. He answered on the first ring. She told him everything. She didn't cry. Her voice was flat, hollowed out as she recounted the demand, the justification, the sheer monstrous audacity of it all. Marco listened without interrupting. When she was finished, there was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. "Okay," he said finally, and his voice was not the voice of her warm, funny best friend. It was the cold, sharp, furious voice of a lawyer who had just been handed a case of profound injustice. "Okay, they've declared war, so we fight back, but we don't fight on their terms. We don't fight with emotion. We fight smart." "What do I do, Marco?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. "They'll keep coming back. They'll wear me down." "No, they won't," he said, his voice a blade. "Because we are going to build a wall they can never, ever break through. They see your house as a liquid asset they can guilt you into giving up. So we are going to make it illiquid. We are going to put your house into an irrevocable trust. We're going to build a legal fortress around it so strong that they can never touch it. They can demand and threaten and cry all they want, but the answer will be a legal and absolute impossibility. The words were a defibrillator to her soul, a legal fortress, a boundary made of law, not of her own frayed and exhausted willpower. The idea was a spark, a single point of light in the crushing darkness. It was the first glimmer of real hope she had felt in weeks. The despair didn't vanish, but it began to recede, pushed back by a new, unfamiliar emotion, a cold, righteous, and deeply strategic anger. She looked around her living room at the walls that held her life, her struggles, her independence. This wasn't just a house. It was her territory, her fortress, and she would not surrender it. The fragmentation was over. The awakening had begun. "Okay, Marco," she said, and her voice was no longer a whisper. It was steady and hard as stone. "Tell me what I need to sign."
The process of healing was slow, quiet, and measured in millimeters. In the first week after her family's catastrophic visit, Clara's world was the size of her small house. Her first victory was walking to the mailbox at the end of her driveway, a journey that left her breathless and clutching the stitches in her side, but felt as triumphant as scaling a mountain. She began applying her professional knowledge to her own recovery. Using her therapist's eye, she created a gentle regimen of stretches and exercises, patiently coaxing her traumatized abdominal muscles back to life. Each small, painful movement was an act of reclaiming her own body, a physical manifestation of the emotional boundaries she was now determined to build. Her house, too, underwent a quiet transformation. One afternoon, fueled by a surge of clarifying anger, she went through her living room and took down every framed family photograph. The smiling, hollow images of her parents and the celebrated portraits of Evan were placed in a box, which she sealed with packing tape and shoved into the back of a closet. In their place, she hung prints from local artists, photos of her smiling with Marco and her colleagues, and a beautiful framed map of Vienna. She was curating her sanctuary, purging it of the ghosts of obligation. Her colleagues from the clinic were her lifeline. They respected her need for space, but refused to let her be isolated, maintaining a steady stream of supportive texts, funny memes, and offers to drop off groceries. A video call with her team to discuss patient handoffs turned into a half-hour of gentle, caring questions about her well-being. They saw her, valued her, and missed her. It was a simple, powerful antidote to the poison of her family's neglect. Her work, the place of her competence and passion, was waiting for her, a future she could still step into. The distant war began, as she knew it would, with her mother's voice. Having found her number blocked, Eleanor resorted to leaving a long, rambling voicemail from a number Clara didn't recognize. Curiosity overriding her apprehension, she listened to it on speakerphone, a strange sense of detachment settling over her, as if she were a researcher studying the tactics of a manipulator. The voicemail was a masterwork. It began with a torrent of wounded tears. "Clara, I can't eat. I can't sleep. I don't understand how you can be so cruel, so unfeeling. We came to you in our hour of greatest need and you threw us out. You are tearing this family apart over a building." Then came the guilt. "Your brother, he's in a terrible state. He locks himself in his room. All his dreams, all his brilliant work turning to dust. And you could fix it. You could be the hero, but you're choosing a house over your own blood. How will you live with yourself?" Finally, it ended with a veiled threat. "Your father and I are just so disappointed. We don't know who this cold, selfish person is. You are making a terrible, terrible mistake." The old Clara would have been shattered by this performance. She would have been consumed by guilt, second-guessing her own reality. The new Clara simply listened until the end, her expression hardening with each pathetic, calculated word. When it was over, she calmly deleted the message and blocked the new number. She was no longer a receptive audience for her mother's theater of lies. Her father's approach was different, a barrage of short, staccato texts sent from his work phone. Your mother is heartbroken. Evan's future is on your conscience. Family is supposed to help family. This is not how you were raised. You are being incredibly selfish. She read each one, allowed herself to feel the familiar, dull ache of his cowardice, his complete inability to stand up for her. Then she blocked his work number 2. Evan's contribution to the campaign was a public, self-pitying post on social media, accompanied by a moody black-and-white photo of him staring out a window. The entrepreneurial journey is a lonely one. Sometimes the people you think will be your biggest supporters are the ones who refuse to believe in your dreams. It's a hard lesson when the betrayal comes from the inside of your own house. Hashtag hustle. Hashtag never give up. Hashtag family first. Marco sent her a screenshot of it with the comment, "The question mark on hashtag family first is a nice touch. Very dramatic." Clara looked at the post, at the smattering of sympathetic comments from Evan's friends, and felt nothing. A surprising, liberating wave of pure indifference. His narrative had no power over her anymore. He could scream his victimhood into the digital void for all she cared. She was no longer a participant in their story. The centerpiece of her new life, the act that would transform her quiet rebellion into an unbreachable defense, took place the following Tuesday. She met Marco at his law office downtown. The space was the complete opposite of her parents' home. All clean lines, modern art, and the quiet, orderly hum of serious work. It was a place of logic and power. Marco led her into a conference room with a sweeping view of the city. He had a thick stack of documents laid out on the polished table. "Okay," he said, his tone shifting from that of her warm best friend to that of her sharp, focused lawyer. "I've had the title and deed pulled for your property. Everything is in order. This document right here is the Declaration of Trust." He explained the legal mechanics in clear, simple terms. "Once you sign this, the ownership of your house transfers from you, Clara Vance, to the Clara Vance Irrevocable Trust. I will be the trustee, and you are the sole beneficiary. That means you retain all the rights to live in and enjoy your property for the rest of your life. What it also means is that you, the individual, can no longer sell the property. Only the trustee can, and only under very specific conditions that are designed to protect your interests. It makes the asset illiquid and untouchable. They can pressure you, coerce you, threaten you. It doesn't matter. Your answer, legally, will always have to be no." He looked her straight in the eye. "This document, Clara, is a fortress. It's a legal no. It's the firewall you deserve." Clara picked up the heavy, expensive-feeling pen. She read the first line of the document, her name and address typed out in stark official font. This was it, the ultimate boundary, a line drawn not in sand, but in the unyielding ink of the law. Her hand was perfectly steady as she signed her name on the final page. The scratch of the nib on the thick paper was the only sound in the room. It was the sound of a lock clicking into place, of a door being barred, of a foundation being legally and permanently secured. A profound sense of relief, so powerful it almost made her dizzy, washed over her. She was safe. A week passed in a state of quiet, productive peace. Clara began doing telehealth consultations from home, reconnecting with her patients. She felt her strength returning, both physical and emotional. She was beginning to imagine a future free from the constant, low-grade anxiety of her family's expectations. She was beginning to feel free. The text message arrived on a Thursday evening, from a number she didn't recognize. Her heart gave a familiar lurch of apprehension, but it was followed by a new, cool wave of calm. She opened it. The message was from her parents, its tone not pleading, but arrogant and commanding. "We have spoken to a real estate agent. He has drawn up the preliminary listing agreement. He will be with us. We are coming over on Sunday at 2 p.m. to discuss the sale of the house. Be ready to sign the papers." Clara read the message twice. The sheer unmitigated gall of it was almost impressive. They had heard her no, had registered her silence, and had decided to simply steamroll it, to show up with an agent in tow, expecting that a final, overwhelming show of force would make her crumble. She looked at the words on the screen, at their empty, impotent demand, but this time there was no fear. There was no panic. She looked around at the walls of her living room, at the art she had chosen, at the books she loved, at the quiet, peaceful space she had fought for and now had legally secured. This was her house, her fortress. And they had no idea they were about to march with all the arrogance of a conquering army directly into an unbreachable wall. The final confrontation was coming, but for the first time in her life, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she was the one who held all the power. She was ready. Sunday arrived, bright and unseasonably warm. Clara spent the morning not in anxious preparation, but in quiet defiance. She worked in her garden, her hands in the soil, feeling the solid, reassuring earth beneath her fingernails. She pruned her rose bushes with a steady hand. She was not a victim bracing for a battle. She was a homeowner tending to her territory. At 1:30, she came inside, showered and dressed in simple, comfortable clothes. She brewed a pitcher of iced tea, arranging it on a tray with 4 glasses and a plate of lemon shortbread cookies she had baked the day before. The act was so mundane, so breathtakingly normal, it felt like the most radical thing she had ever done. She was refusing to participate in their drama. This was her house, her terms. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. She took a slow, centering breath, walked to the door, and opened it. They stood on her porch, a united front of entitlement. Her parents, Eleanor and Richard, were dressed in their Sunday best, as if for a business negotiation. Her brother, Evan, stood slightly behind them, shifting his weight from foot to foot, his face a mask of nervous energy. And with them, looking deeply uncomfortable in a rumpled suit and holding a leather briefcase, was a balding, weary-looking man she presumed was the real estate agent. "Clara," her mother said, her voice a brittle, cheerful command, "let's not waste his time, shall we?" She made to sweep past Clara into the house, but Clara didn't move. She held her ground in the doorway. "Hello, Mr. Davies," she said, her voice polite and calm as she looked directly at the agent. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, but please come in. Have some iced tea." She stepped back, allowing the awkward procession to enter her living room. The sight of the iced tea and cookies seemed to completely unnerve them. It was a gesture of hospitality so contrary to the hostile takeover they had planned that it threw them off balance. Clara remained standing as they arranged themselves on her sofa. Mr. Davies, looking increasingly like a man who regretted his life choices, reluctantly opened his briefcase on the coffee table. "As your mother mentioned," he began, his voice hesitant, "I've drawn up a standard listing agreement for the property based on a very favorable market analysis. The commission is—" "Thank you, Mr. Davis," Eleanor cut him off, taking charge. "Clara, darling, we can go through the specifics later. The important thing is to sign the initial agreement today so we can get the house on the market by next week. Time is of the essence for Evan." Her father chimed in, his tone that of a man trying to sound reasonable. "Evan's company is on the cusp of a major breakthrough, Clara. This is an investment in the entire family's future.
Once the company takes off, we'll see that you're taken care of. You can buy an even bigger house." "This is your chance to be the hero, Claire," he pleaded, his voice cracking with self-pity. "We can save us. All you have to do is sign." Clara let the silence stretch after they had finished. She looked at each of their expectant, predatory faces. She saw the years of manipulation, of dismissal, of being treated not as a daughter or a sister, but as a utility. She let them wait in the quiet tension, watching their confidence begin to fray. Finally, she spoke. "Thank you for that presentation," she said, her voice so calm it was chilling. But the answer is no. The three of them stared at her, stunned. It was as if the furniture itself had just spoken. "What do you mean, no?" Eleanor snapped, her polite facade cracking. "Don't be ridiculous, Clara. We are not asking." "And I am not offering," Clara replied, her voice remaining perfectly even. She took a step forward, her presence suddenly commanding the entire room. "Let me be perfectly, unequivocally clear. A few weeks ago, I was lying in a hospital bed, recovering from a life-threatening surgery that you, my family, refused to help me with. You left me with a bill that wiped out every penny I had ever saved to protect your own insurance premiums." She looked directly at her brother. "And now you stand in my house, the house I am struggling to keep because you abandoned me, and you have the audacity to demand that I make myself homeless to fund your failing business?" She let out a short, sharp, humorless laugh. "You are not asking for help. You are attempting to liquidate your last remaining asset, me. And I will not let you."